Okay, let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Eat Well Bites. I'm Julie Chavdi, the Associate Director of Health and Wellbeing for the Workwell Center. And we're excited to bring you Eat Well Bites, sponsored by the Healthy Campus Eat Well Subcommittee. Today's topic is sugar proof, protecting yourself and your family from the dangers of added sugars with simple everyday fixes. Throughout today's session, you're welcome to use the chat to make comments or answer questions specific to today's topic. At the end, we'll have some exciting announcements, along with asking you to fill out an evaluation form and some raffle prizes. Make sure you minimize or mute yourself to minimize any background noise. I'd like to thank our co-leads for the Eat Well Subcommittee, Dr. Carrie Kreutzer from the Leonard Davis School of Gerontology and Keck School of Medicine, and Lindsay Pine, dining dietitian with USC Hospitality. On behalf of our Eat Well subcommittee, we're excited to bring you these monthly bite-sized nutrition education webinars that occur the first Thursday of every month, providing you with practical tips, hands-on demonstrations, resources, and support for USC faculty and staff to help you improve health and quality of life through nutrition and healthy eating habits. So over the next 30 minutes, you'll be hearing from our expert speaker around a very, very important topic. And I also like to thank the rest of our Eat Well subcommittee members who've been working very hard to create a health promoting university at USC. And as always, we'd like to remind you to move, stretch, stand if you like during today's session, whatever feels best for you. Just a reminder to take a quick break. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Kreutzer to introduce our speaker for today.
Thank you, Julie. We're happy to have Michael Gorin with us, Dr. Michael Gorin. He is professor and vice chair for research in the Department of Pediatrics and directs the Southern California Center for Latino Health. And he's based at Children's Hospital, Los Angeles, and has a faculty appointment through Keck School of Medicine. I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Gorin.
Thank you. Carrie and Julie and everybody for putting on these events and for inviting me to speak today. It's a pleasure to be here. Just going to share my slides quickly. How does that look, everybody? I get a thumbs up? Okay, great. Well, yeah, I've been at USC in August, it will be 25 years. 6 of those last years have been at Children's Hospital Los Angeles in pediatrics, doing research on this topic. So I'm going to talk very briefly about some of the background. I'm going to go pretty quickly because I don't have much time, but the slides will be available afterwards. I'm going to talk about, I like to think of sugar as the good, the bad, and the ugly. So there's good sugars, bad sugars, and ugly sugars. Good sugars are the natural sugars in whole fruit. Nothing wrong with whole fruit. That's a very healthy source of nutrition. And then there's also natural sugars found in dairy and milk. Bad sugars we'll talk mostly about are the added sugars, sugars added to food during processing, of which there are over 200 names currently for added sugar. And then right at the end, because this could be a talk all on its own, I'll mention the ugly, and the ugly is low-calorie sweeteners, which are beginning to take over our food supply. These are non-sugar compounds that are hundreds or thousands of times sweeter than ordinary sugar, but have 0 or low calories. And these compounds have multiple effects on the body that I'll briefly mention. Sugar consumption in the US has increased tremendously over the last 125 years, as you can see on this graph here. This is teaspoons of sugar per person per day that we consume. So you can see, and there's different types of sugar. Regular table sugar, that's the white stuff that you buy in bags. High fructose corn syrup, which is a major source of sweetener in the food supply, and then others, sugars among those 200 names that I mentioned. But you can see the level of consumption of almost now 30 to 35 teaspoons per day is much, much higher than the healthy recommendations from the US dietary guidelines. Most of my work has been in children, but this stuff is relevant to adults. In fact, our research shows that children are even more susceptible to the adverse effects, but as adults also are affected, and almost every organ of the body is affected by too much sugar. Now, I'm not saying we don't need to eat any sugar at all. I don't think that's healthy or realistic, but we need to rein it in terms of moderation. Sugar can affect brain in terms of learning ability, mood, and behavior. Sugar is actually a major source of cardiovascular risk, which surprises a lot of people. It's not necessarily dietary fat, but dietary sugar that can increase cardiovascular risk. Type 2 diabetes, digestive issues, obesity, joint problems are all affected by too much sugar. This is just a sampling of some of the 200 plus names for sugar. You can take a quick look in here and see if you can spot any surprising ones. I'd like to point out a few. I'd like to point out things like organic brown rice syrup. This is a good example of a name for sugar that has been invented by the food industry to make sugar sound healthy. It's organic, it's brown, it's rice, but really organic brown rice syrup is almost identical to corn syrup, except it's made from rice that's organic instead of corn that's yellow. Many people are aware of high fructose corn syrup and know to avoid that in foods, but this is the main sweetener in, for example, beverages, but also other foods as well. But it's not just high fructose corn syrup that's a source of fructose. Many other foods that kind of slip under the radar are even higher in fructose. For example, apple juice has more fructose than soda made with high fructose corn syrup. And that's because fructose is the main sugar in apples, which is liberated into the juice. And agave syrup is also surprising to some people. It is almost 90% fructose. And the type of sugar matters. The research shows that sugars that are naturally high in fructose are more have more adverse effects on the body. But it gets a little confusing because there's natural sugars in apples and there's sugars in apple juice. But the situations are very different when you eat an apple versus drinking apple juice. As shown here, when you eat an apple, you get all the other nutrients. The fructose is released very slowly, and it has a less adverse impact on the body. And in fact, in this situation, some of the fructose is converted to glucose and used for energy. So very different than situation than drinking apple juice, where you've liberated the juice from 3 or 4 apples to create a glass of apple juice. And in this situation, where you're drinking the sugars, which is concentrated, it's taken up rapidly in the body and has adverse effects, including conversion into fat in the liver, which is where we get the link between sugars and cardiovascular risk because of that conversion into fat. So just quickly now go through some of the strategies that we outline in Sugar Proof, which I thought might be useful. Sugary beverages are the main source of added sugars in the food supply. So that's the first line of attack. Liquid sugar, very problematic. So we'd like to recommend perhaps not purchasing it at the grocery store, kind of keeping it out of the house. Kids and adults will have plenty of opportunities outside of the house, but try to make water the source of beverage at meal times, for exercise times, and so on. You can use dilution as well. We like to promote dilution of, for example, apple juice, which is extremely concentrated and sweet, and you can easily dilute that down gradually over time. Water should definitely be the default drink in the home environment, and again, you can optimize the environment by just keeping glass bottles or jugs of water handy in the fridge and then bringing them out at meal times. And you can doctor that up with things like a splash of squeezed orange juice or a splash of squeezed lime juice or sliced cucumber or things like that. And in terms of juice, this really is kind of a major issue for kids today because it's seen as a healthy drink. Although the American Academy of Pediatrics does have limits on juice consumption for kids, which you can see here varies by age. So we like to recommend eating fruit, not drinking fruit. Smoothies always come up in a question, should we be consuming smoothies? And I think smoothies are a good way to pack a lot of good nutrients. Watch out for commercial smoothies, though. They often have a lot of added sugars and are often sweetened with fruit concentrates, which can be problematic. Although if you blend whole fruit, it's fine. The fiber and the nutrients are retained. And try to use milk or plant milk as the base, not fruit juice or even yogurt. Plain yogurt is a great base for a smoothie because it is also high in protein. Just look out for yogurts with added sugars in there. You can buy very plain version without any added sugars. And you can supplement that with extra sources of protein. I've done a lot of experiments on myself with glucose monitoring, just to show you here as an example. I like to use oat milk. Some people say that oat milk's not great because it produces a big glucose response in the blood, and it does. This is what happened when I drank a big glass of oat milk. I got a big spike in my blood sugars. But when I made a smoothie, supplementing it with lots of protein and lots of fiber, you can see I easily dampened down that glucose spike and packed in a lot more nutrients into that beverage. In terms of sugars at home, I like to say to try and use more sugars that are less processed, like coconut sugar, raw honey, and maple syrup. These are still added sugars, but they're less processed. A simple tip is just to reduce the sugar in the recipe. So if you're making cookies or a cake, you can easily just cut back on the recipe by 30 to 50%. And the recipe will pretty much come out quite nicely. In Sugar Proof, we challenged ourselves to make foods without any added sugars, just using the natural sweetness of whole foods like you find in bananas or dates, which introduces a more natural taste, introduces the fiber and the phytonutrients that you get from the whole fruits, and overall will have less overall sugar. And a good example of that is our sugar-proof blueberry muffins. You can see here a typical coffee shop or store-bought packaged muffin might have a lot of added sugars, up to 7 or 8 teaspoons of added sugars versus our version, which has 0 added sugars. And these are sweetened just with the banana blended into the batter and the blueberries. We can share that recipe with you as well. And again, in terms of what happens to your blood sugar response, you can see, again, we did some experiments here. You eat a typical grocery purchased or coffee shop muffin, you get a big spike in blood sugars, whereas with the blueberry sugar-proof muffin, you can easily blunt that down. Also look out for hidden sugars, which will surprisingly show up in things like packaged bread, crackers, pasta sauce, nut butter, salad dressing, the list goes on. You might be surprised if you look in your pantry at your favorite brands of some of these items, and the new food labels actually points this out. These are the new food labels that were introduced a couple of years ago. And you can see there's a separate line for added sugars. So there may be natural sugars in a product, let's say yogurt, for example. There might be the natural sugar from the dairy that's in there, and then there could be a line for added sugars if there's any additional sugar added during processing. So look out for these, and just, when you're at the grocery store, try to look for brands of some of these products that have 0 added sugars, and there's there's lots of good, healthier alternatives without those added sugars. Breakfast is typically a major source of sugar. Breakfasts are typically very high in sugar. Again, these are some tracings from my blood sugar when I had different breakfasts. When I had toast on marmalade on toast, big spike in blood sugar. And even though I had nothing else to eat, you can see typically this comes back up. Oatmeal dampens it a little bit, and type of oatmeal matters. So highly processed oatmeal or instant oatmeal can give you a very high spike. But if you make steel cut oatmeal, for example, and add sources of protein or fiber to it, you can dampen that down. Or if you keep it simple and don't have any source of sugars or simple carbohydrates, you can totally flatten your blood sugar response with similar amounts of calories, but not get the glucose response. And these glucose spikes are what introduces a lot of issues metabolically and in terms of energy levels. So some simple tips for breakfast cereals. Look for breakfast cereals with 4 grams or less of added sugar per serving. Try to find ones with at least some fiber in there. Look out for cereals that are marketed as whole grain. I mean, this is used as a ploy to promote things as healthy, but in fact, even whole grain cereals can have more added sugar. And it's better to start off simple and just buy a very simple cereal. For example, you might want to buy very plain O's instead of Honey Nut O's. Just buy plain O's and use those for breakfast, but supplement it with sprinkles of fiber. Add your own source of sweetness in there with berries or a sliced banana, and that way you can introduce more nutrients into the breakfast. If you or your kids or your partner seems to be too hooked on a high sugar cereal, then you can consider it's like a dilution principle too. You can mix in with a basic cereal. For example, take some of those plain O's and mix it in with the high sugar cereal so that you gradually reduce the amount of added sugars coming in. It also matters what you put on your toast. I love myself a nice piece of toast in the morning, but I think you can reduce sugars by not using different things on top of it. So for example, I like ricotta cheese or cottage cheese on my toast. Same is true for pancakes and French toast. You don't have to put maple syrup on those. If you're making pancakes or waffles or something like that, you can add an extra egg into the batter or add some protein powder into the batter or use a high protein flour. So small things you can do to try and tip the balance towards more protein and less sugar. And you can do that also with the toppings by skipping some of these toppings and using some alternative toppings like are listed here. Also, there's a lot more of these strategies in our book, and in fact, I am sharing with everybody on this call our breakfast supplement, which will have 101 different ideas for breakfast that are low in added sugar. So these are the recommendations. I'm just going to wrap up here and make sure there's enough time for questions. Again, you'll get these on the handout, so I don't need to go through it in detail. Just in the last minute, low-calorie sweeteners or non-sugar sweeteners. There's a lot of these now. These are 20 different non-sugar sweeteners that are approved in the US. The most common one would be sucralose. That's the yellow packets. That's the sweetener in soda, or ACE is another one. Aspartame is another one. Many of these compounds have multiple effects on the body, and for many people don't taste that good. There's a lot of products now you'll see in the market with natural sweeteners. The natural sweeteners listed here, the most popular ones being monk fruit and stevia, which the active ingredient in stevia leaf is reboidesoid A. So both stevia and monk fruit are not actually used in their whole form as a sweetener. What the food industry is doing is purifying compounds out of these natural occurring plants and creating compounds that are very sweet. So there are some pros. They're natural. They add sweetness without the calories. They can reduce those glucose spikes that derive from nature, and they are FDA approved. Although they're not as broadly approved in other countries like in Europe. For many people, they don't taste great. They do have some effects. These compounds are not inert in the body because they're calorie-free. They're not digested very well and can build up in the gut and affect gut health, gut microbiome. And studies show that they can actually lead to increased calorie and sugar consumption. So it meant for me personally, if I'm going to be, let's say, making some cookies or baking a cake, I wouldn't use these because I don't think it would taste as good, and I'm worried about some of these effects. I would recommend you just use regular sugar and just use less of it. And that's kind of one of my main strategies. So I'm going to end here. I think we got 5 or 10 minutes left for questions. Sorry, that was a bit quick.
No,
but
it's
happy
great.
to take questions.
Yeah, Dr. Gorin, there were a couple questions in the beginning, and I think maybe you answered it, but I think viewers would like your opinion on Zevia and stevia and date sugar and chewing on sugarcane bits.
Yeah, well, stevia, I did mention at the end here. So stevia, it's stevia sweetener is actually a compound called reboidesoid A that is purified or processed out of the stevia plant. And it is a very complex molecule that is very sweet. But it does have these other effects on the body and is not that well studied. So I'm not a big fan of those natural sweeteners.
There was a question just recent about inulin, and if you can define what inulin is.
Yeah, inulin, well, you might have a better answer on this than me. Inulin's not necessarily a sugar. It's a non-digestible carbohydrate that is used as a prebiotic. Because it's not digested, it's fermented in the gut or broken down in the gut by gut bacteria. So it's intended to feed your gut bacteria to promote bacterial diversity in the gut in a healthy way.
And I think slow down the metabolism of the sugars, proteins, fats, etc., as part of your digestion to help keep you full longer.
Yeah, which is
yeah.
what you can get with just a regular fiber.
What about, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, can you go back to the slide with the recommendations where you had 10% of total daily caloric intake, 50 grams per day. These
Yeah.
are really small amounts, and I don't know that people realize for kids, it's 4 teaspoons of sugar, which is 1 tablespoon plus 1 teaspoon in a whole entire day of added
Right.
sugar, which easily a can of soda is 3 times that amount of the daily recommended level.
Yeah, yeah. So this is added sugars, so does not include sugars in whole fruit or in dairy. The USDA doesn't count juice as added sugars. I would, because you can get about the same amount of sugars from a glass of apple juice as you would from a can of soda. So it is a small amount, and I think it's a good number to keep in mind when you're shopping for your kids, in terms of looking at those nutrition labels and seeing how the yogurt that you picked up might have 10 or 15 grams of added sugar in there, and that's going to take up a big chunk of that. So I think, you don't have to like be religious about this in any way, but I think it is a good guide in terms of when you're at the grocery store that should hopefully make you think about some other brands that are lower in added sugar or even void of added sugar.
Yeah, two questions that just came in. Jill asked if kids' physiological system behaves similarly to adults in terms of how the body processes sugar.
Yeah, that's a great question, Jill. And it's different. And that's one reason why I wrote the book, because actually there's several things going on in kids that are different. One is that they have a built-in craving for sweetness. Kids have a higher preference for sweetness, which is supposed to be helpful from an ancestral point of view. It promotes breast milk, which is sweet, and it helps them recognize foods that might have spoiled. But obviously that's backfiring in today's food environment. And also kids are more vulnerable to high sugar because their organs are still developing. They may not yet be well enough developed to protect them from those adverse effects. A perfect example for that is tooth decay. So children have higher levels of tooth decay from consuming too much sugar because as teeth are developing, they don't have the enamel yet to protect them from the acid that's produced by the bacteria feeding off of sugar in the mouth. That's just one very clear-cut example, but there's other similar examples of kids' organ development not being established enough to protect them from the adverse sugars.
Another question that Siri asked, and if you don't mind, I'll answer it quickly, is does eliminating sugar from the diet at an early age prevent diabetes? And there's two types of diabetes, the genetic or autoimmune, that the body doesn't produce any insulin, but the type 2 diabetes that we're now seeing in children, which is much of Dr. Goran's work. Type 2 diabetes, your body is producing the insulin due to often excessive fat in the body. The insulin isn't getting to where it needs to, and too much sugar ends up in elevated sugar levels in the body. So too much sugar eating and getting diabetes is not related unless you're gaining excessive amounts of weight and then ending up with type 2 diabetes because of carrying extra weight on your body.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're out of time. There's a bunch of questions in the chat, and if you're all okay with this, we're going to be sending these questions to Dr. Goran to answer offline, and we'll send them out in our post-webinar communication. There are a lot of really, really good questions. Thank you so much, Dr. Goran, for your fantastic presentation.
My pleasure.
We may need you back for a part 2 in the near future with all these questions.
Anytime. Yeah.
Lindsay, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Just wanted to give everyone just a quick reminder just about our Eat Well branded meals that we have in partnership with USC Hospitality. The Eat Well meal guidelines were developed with nutrient-rich ingredients, flavor, and balance in mind, and can be found in locations at the center of the UPC campus, as well as 2 locations at HSC, and we'll have some new options coming this fall. So definitely please try them. Let us know what you think. We'd love feedback. Next slide. And the Eat Well subcommittee is still seeking recipes for the USC faculty and staff cookbook. We have around 50 recipes so far. We want to keep on adding to that. So please, even if you think something is not necessarily healthy, a recipe that you cook often, still submit it. We have nutrition experts that will be making suggestions on different swaps that people can make. So please, throughout the summer, keep submitting those recipes.
And we're excited to share that Eat Well Bites will continue based on popular demand. So keep coming, keep spreading the word. And here's a sneak peek for our summer schedule. June will be on navigating eating during the workday. July will be optimizing nutrition on the go. So smart eating strategies for traveling during our summer adventures. And August will be on dairy and milk alternatives, where to get your calcium. Our webpage is not yet up, but we'll let you all know when it's time to register. But it's the first Thursday of every month, with the exception of July, the second Thursday. And with that, I'd like to say thank you, ask you all to fill out the evaluation form. It's important to us to hear from you. And we are going to do a raffle right now. We are going to raffle off a gift card for Trader Joe's. And Michael has donated 4 of his sugar-proof books signed by himself. So we'll be in touch with you. Let's see who the lucky winners are. And we'll reach out to you. Suzanne will reach out to you to coordinate delivery. And this is for the Trader Joe's gift card. Stephanie Wilson, congratulations. And now for the book, Sugar-Proof book signed by Michael Gorin himself. Matthew Hudson, congratulations. Patrice Renee Murray, congratulations. Michael Atkins, congratulations to Michael. And our last lucky winner of the book goes to Eunice Noriega. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for being here today, and we'll see you all next month.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.